Hi everyone, welcome back into the classroom. We're going to paint a landscape today, kind of a nice little river with a fly fisherman. It's been a couple of years since I've painted the fisherman, and kind of surprising since I'm an avid fisherman. But anyway, so I have it right here. I have a couple of photos, and I kind of put it together with Photoshop, a fly fisherman, some different rocks and rivers and stuff. So kind of put it together. That's what I like to do when I can't go outside. It's 103 out today, so not going outside, but it's kind of fun to do it, put them together in Photoshop, print it off. Then I made a quick little sketch here of where I'm going to do the man. Now I'm going to do it very what we call representational impressionistic. So I'll get a little bit of realism in it, but carry a very impressionistic edge to it as well. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So what I have here, the board itself is 20 inches across this way, and it's about almost 13 inches this way, about 12 and a half, 13 inches. But you can use anything that you can find a frame for. We make our own frames here, so there's no worries. All right, my colors that I have out here, this is my standard palette that I paint with you here on the channel. This is Hansa yellow, Darty light yellow, yellow oxide, Naphthol red light, burnt sienna, pine green, phthalo blue, red violet, quinacridone violet, and a lot of white. And this is my thicker white. I want it today because I'm going to be doing some texturing type of effects. Now we have some other mediums that can help you do that, but I keep a lot. I paint a lot. And some of you have seen this kind of thing. This is my container of thick white that I use here. Now this has been in here for several years, and I just, if it ever starts to dry just a little bit, I missed a little water in there. But I keep it out here, and I let it thicken up just a bit, and then I kind of control it. So it's my thicker white, so you can see it's quite a bit thicker than some of my other colors that are out here. It has a lot of body to it, and I like to sometimes paint with my white very thick, and my other colors a little bit more flow, just a little bit better. Okay, I also have out Daravan's open medium. This is the one that I really like. I might use it on the river today. And then I have my little cap of extender out here, and that I can use for slowing down but also thinning down the paints. Okay, all right, let's get into it. So the background here is base coated about a value 9 gray. I took a touch of blue and the Naphthol red light, lightened it with white to about a value 9, and then base coated here, and then did my sketch and stuff. So off we go. This is a 1-inch brush. I'm going to put some extender into this, so I'm going to thin this down for just a minute. We're going to make quite a bit of this sky. I'm going to keep the sky, though, very gray. I like the kind of grayness in one of the photos that I found to kind of use as a reference, so I'm going to keep the sky kind of gray. Blue and burnt sienna. I used red earlier, so I'll use some burnt sienna into this. And I'm just going to make this real light gray here, and about the value 9 and stuff that I have here. So it's not going to be too much different, but I want to get some, I want the color to go on a little thicker, and I want this, what we call the atmosphere, to come into my color, my painting here. So I want to move my brush in all different kinds of directions, maybe a bit of blue over here, so I get a slightly different stroke here. And I'll let some of the other background gray show through. We're gonna, I'm gonna leave some of these brush marks, which is gonna be great. And let's put a bit of this over here, just run that through. We can go more blue and stuff later, but I want this to be, I want the viewer's eye to be down here. I don't want it to be up here. And you can see in some of the reference photos that I have up there, there's this real misty look there, and I'm not gonna do that. I use reference photos for just that, reference. I never copy them. Okay, so I put out an idea and say, yeah, that's kind of cool, but I really like this area down here. So that's what I want to focus on. So the sky will be an afterthought. So will this kind of mountain back up there. And I'm going to take this mountain color, I'll darken it down, same kind of grays and stuff that I have here. A little more blue, a little more burnt sienna, maybe a touch of that red here. Let's get this other red into that. And that's a pretty kind of a mountainous kind of color here. And we'll just push some of that. And see, when I use my brush like this, you know, I'm going to get very lost in different types of edges and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll use my my hand or a paper towel to drop in some edges and stuff. But I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff here, very impressionistic, and so I want to put in some angles. Now we're going to decide our light. Those of you who paint landscapes with me, we know one of the first things I do is I decide my light, because that controls how I paint it. Right now, I just want some of this movement and modeling of color to get in here, so that we can get some different looks here to our mountain. Very simple, and we'll push just a bit of this back here, and just real simple. So it gets some of this burnt sienna, some blues, some different colors in there. And if we leave a very relaxed or casual edge to it, there's not much we have to do. That is really hard, and I'll be very honest with you. That's really hard because sometimes, you know, an object, and when you're painting it, happens right away, and it looks great. But inside, as the artist, you're going, oh, that, you know, I better touch that again because I can't believe it happened so much, and then you ruin it. So, you know, part of the being an impressionistic artist, move that out of the way, part of it being an impressionistic artist like I am, is that you've got to have the confidence to just hit it a couple of times and get out, and then you can come back and revisit it later, but just don't concentrate too much on it, okay? All right, so let's get up here let's grab some yellows, some burnt siennas, some greens, maybe a touch of our violets. We'll model some of this together here, so it gets a gray as well, but different. See, and it's real different. Matter of fact, let's just put a little bit of this open medium and stuff in this. And let's drop this down. This is going to be kind of the hill, and you know, when you're painting like this, we're going to put everything in very suggestive, very modeled. Now I may want to open this up. I like what's up into the scene up there. I like that, but it's a little closed down, so I don't want to do it. Those of you who paint landscapes, you also know this one has a really good triangle shape to it for traveling that, and we'll talk more about that as we get going. But let's put a little more blue and a little more burnt sienna into this. Let's get some of these darker right out through here, and see, it's just modeled together. And I know it's hard. I'm going to put a little open medium into this so it stays a little thicker here, and I know it's hard to leave some of this just this rough, but you know, we really want to do it. We really want to do it. Let's leave a burnt sienna stroke right in through there. Okay, this is really going to help this part of the scene pull forward here and stuff. So some of these different colors here that we want in here. Now, we can take a little bit of our atmospheric color and pull down through that with like your paper towel here, blur down through that just a bit. You know, on the seascape, we put those high volumes of colors in with the paper towels, and I use the paper towels a lot to get some of those looks, to blur out and get some of these looks in through here, and it really works well. Really works well. So now, so I want to do is set up this depth of the scene. So, and you know, we know from landscapes we move in triangles in here. So I want to grab that. Now, I also want to get some of this water in here, and we're going to get some blue, some, you know, water is really the sky, but you know, this is a real gray day, so it's going to have a lot of gray in it. But we're going to make kind of a toned blue-green. Don't mix it up too well. Burnt siennas, green, and blue. And let's just do a bit of this horizontal, this nice, and just let some of those colors come out. And get brave. Let's put a little open medium in that as well. Let's just let some of that color come out. Not too long a stroke, but you know, because I always advise you, don't take too long a strokes here. But let's just get a little bit of that horizontal in there, see? And that's going to capture some of the dark that we want to get up into this corner here. Let's get just a touch of blue and that burnt sienna right up in there, so it's a slightly different tone color right in there. That's good. as we come out, we want to go to these lighter, we want to get some yellows in there, some of these other colors. And it's a green, so but if it's too bright, you can always knock it down with just a touch of the red, which knocks its intensity, because that's your complement, right? Let's grab some of this, and let's just knock some of that right in here. Let's get some yellows in there as well. So you get, and this is what I like. We want to get some of this different tones going on in here. Let's get some burnt sienna in there as well. Some of our sky. Let's get some of that burnt sienna in there. Lighter burnt sienna here. We're going to push, into this water that's going to be up here. We're going to push in some, some rocks and stuff like that. Let's just grab some of this, both the colors together, and just kind of move them. So this water is going to have a lot of color kind of moving together. We'll do it in several applications here, but we want to suggest that shadow there, okay? And I'm going to thin this just a bit, go a touch lighter right up here, and we'll get right up by where that rock is going to go here. Try not to take too many steps. So when you step back and you look at that, yeah, we're capturing this look of the water that's right in there. Try not to take too many strokes. See, every time you stroke that brush, you're gonna blend those tones together, and I don't want to do it. We want to incorporate them, move them together, but we don't blend them. And I had one person comment on there, and I love to read your guys' comments and stuff, and she said, no matter how many times you say you're not blending, you're blending. I don't use the word blend, because blending is making two colors, moving them together and making a separate tone. I don't do that. I push the colors together so that you can still see the tones, and it is called incorporating the colors, not blending. Too many artists use the term blending together, and it isn't really blending, it's incorporating. If you start thinking blending, you're just going to move it and move it and move it to keep yourself moving. I try to use as few strokes as possible and move as much as possible, so I don't blend my tones together. And keep a little, I like to incorporate them. And I know there'll be people who will say, you're blending, and I'm not. It's not entering my mind. Matter of fact, it's in my mind I'm saying stop, 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 because I don't want to blend, okay? So, but if you want to blend, go blend. I don't. So I'm going to take a little blue, a little green. Let's lighten this just a bit. Just a bit, maybe a bit of burnt sienna in that. Love that sienna. Let's get this tone in there as well. Just a few strokes of it here. See this? Take the stroke, maybe one, maybe two strokes, but no more than that, because it'll start to blend, and that'll give us another little tone going into that water. As we go further back, what is the water in the back? It's the sky. So let's get some of these light tones right back up in here. Right back, and I use as big a brush when I paint like this. I use as big a brush as possible, so that I have to take as few strokes as possible. Here, we'll pull some of that down just a bit. You pull down, you create the reflections and stuff, and I'm going to have a few in there, but you also create some pulling down. Like I've told you another. It creates a stillness to the water, and horizontal creates a movement to the water. So we'll do that. I'm going to set that brush down for a minute. I'm going to go back into, this is my 1/2 inch. Okay, I'm going to grab, I deserve a fresh paper towel too. Okay, let's go in, and we're going to want to set this rock, but I'm going to set some of this light color. Let's get some nice light yellow greens here. Hansa and pine. Don't mix it up too well. Maybe a bit of yellow oxide in there. Let's just push some of that in here. A little more yellow oxide, maybe a touch of burnt sienna. Don't mix it up real well. Do some horizontals and some verticals here. Let's just get some of that color in there. Here, like that. This is your first block into the area. You can tap down and move through. Sometimes I'll end up doing that with my paper towel. Let's grab a little dark with that as well. Pull that down. And see, this is what we want. This variation and moving of the color there. That's what's going to give you the interest. Let's grab a little bit of this lighter color right back through here and push some of that in. That could be trees and stuff eventually. I wiped out my man. I'll be sketching him again here, but I always do that. Okay, so we'll set that into the back there. Okay, yeah, that's going to work. And let's just go ahead and make a lighter gray, blue. Let's make blue and red. You can make grays from blue and red, blue and burnt sienna and green and red violet. That all makes beautiful gray colors here. Let's grab a little burnt sienna. I'd like my grays to be very harmonious, so I usually carry a lot of different tones in them. But let's just casually just drop in this rock, or just the idea of what this rock will be. Well, it's a little wet here, so I can get some of that, a little bit of those colors incorporating. Let's just pull down as well into the water there just a bit here. Okay, so we'll get that, but we'll do more later. Just get a little bit of this. Darken this down slightly. Let's go over here and just grab some of this and darken it down. Good rocks or good grays, different grays. So a little darker because it's over here towards the shadow. Let's drop in what is going to be this rock here. So that's a little too dark. Let's just drop this one in here. That's good. Let's just give the idea of a couple other rocks here along the shoreline there. That'll be in there. Okay. As we add that in there, lots of stuff to add in. Now, let's go in and let's get some trees. Now, I'm going to put some of these trees in. Usually I will put the mountain in first, but I'm going to put the trees in here, some of the big trees. And, you know, you can do it in any order. We're all a Prima painter, so we can do it in any order. So I'm just going to model up some color here and put a little bit of extender. I want this color a little bit loose. Tap this in. Don't mix it up too well. And I'm just going to come in here right into this area and kind of push in some of the trees here, just up and down, a few horizontals, so we can get some horizontals and some verticals, so we get some of the uneven movement through our edge here. This is the one thing that I tend to do, because I'm very left-brained, and as a left-brain artist, you know, I tend to make things very perfect, you know, I tend to make things too perfect, too precise. I line them up like little soldiers, you know. That's what left-brain people do. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? But to get away from that, I started doing this blocking in with a paper towel first, and it just loosens up a lot of my technique that I'm going to do. I use the edge and I push like this, and it can look like the edges of little trees and stuff like that. So, you know, it really helps me get some of these tones out there in a very, very casual and impressionistic way. And then we'll come back and we'll do some more stuff to that. But it's, you know, you look at it, okay, now, this is what you do is when you're looking at your reference photo, you know, there, you kind of squint down. You squint down. When an artist looks at it, they squint down. When you squint down, what you're doing is you're compressing the values that you're seeing through your eyes. So you kind of squint down and you look at it. The medium values and stuff are kind of lost, and all you're doing is breaking it down basically into light and dark. So when you break it down and you see these light areas and these dark areas as you squint down, that's what you're looking for with this particular stage. Is you're putting it on and you're getting some of your lights and some of your darks. There's a lot of work that we have to do, but it gets our lights and some of our darks on there, and we can go from there, okay? That's what we do. So now let's go back up, return up here to our mountain. Let's take some light color, some dirty light color. We want to keep this kind of a blue violet here, really. Mountains in the distance go more of a blue violet, and we want to keep the intensity kind of dull. So I'm going to keep so I add a little violet, a little green, a little burnt sienna, and lighten this up, model this up onto my palette here. And light side of the mountain is, or light is basically what it is right up here coming this way, okay? So we're going to have shadows coming the other side. Now this is a little dark, so I might use this as a shadow. Let's even put a little more red or burnt sienna in it right over here. A little bit of violet maybe right over here. We don't want to get the mountain though too dark, because because of its size, it will take over the landscape here. So, but let's just drop some of this in. Now you got to remember your values will dry darker, right? So we want to keep this expression as light as possible. Now, if you want to create a lot of that movement like that one has, I'm going to just move my brush around a bit here. And so if light is coming from the right side, left side, every stroke you take to the left side here is a shadowing stroke here. And so we want to get some other little mountainous, little ravines and stuff like that in there into this mountain. So we'll get some other colors, but change the tone a bit. Let's lighten that up a bit. Change that just a bit, get some of that warmer bit, just a touch warmer of that sienna and stuff in there. Let's get some medium greens and stuff and push some of that in there as well, and drag that around, model that color around. We want to create depth and atmosphere, so we're going to move some of these colors together like this, and just kind of see, I just drag one or two strokes here like this, breaking, and this is what I call incorporating the colors together, taking those mountain colors right like that and into this tree line here, and it's going to bring those edges and stuff like that together. Now, before I go too far, I'm going to come over here to the light side. And usually a lot of artists to the light side will warm it actually to the orange. And some of you that have painted some of the mountains with me, you hear me say that. We paint it to the orange, slightly a little orange or center that warms that up a bit. Gets a different little tone there to that. Let's get that just a bit. Now, do you want to have snow, which I want to kind of do. So I'm just going to kind of tap this around a bit here. Here, push that around like that. Okay. I love mountains painted with big alla prima strokes, big light strokes. It gives some power. Now we got to be kind of careful. I may love it, but we got to be kind of careful because we don't want this to take over the painting here. Here, like, too much. We want just a bit of that. So I want maybe a bit of light here, nice thick. This is why I love the thicker white. I put this on here, it's going to have power. And I might put a more powerful mark on like that and just leave that for a bit to see how I'm going to like it. Now see, that's very impressionistic edge. See the edges of your colors there rolling over each other without blending through. That's the impressionism that I really like. And let's just maybe a touch of light right out there like that. Let's put a touch more, just a bit of light right out there. Here, that gives a little bit of snow interest back up there. Here's a nice right side we can create right in there. Here. So you want some rights and some lefts in there to create some of that interest and that movement back there. And model the colors so that they're not always the same. They're all coming out a little differently each time. Get that modeling going there. Let's take a bit of that gray, maybe a bit more burnt sienna into this one and just hit back in here. Maybe those are some verticals here, right up on that edge. There, like that. That's kind of and see, you can paint a lot on your mountain here. Matter of fact, you can spend, take a look at that. And again, those of you who paint with me all the time on our channel, that camera, that's my number one shot, what we call camera one shot. We have 3 cameras we're filming here, sometimes 4, but that's my camera one, and it's about 8 feet away shooting at here. So when you step back and look at it and you see me looking at my monitors, I'm looking at it what it looks to the distance. At home, you should get back away from the easel about 8 feet or so and take a look at it, because there's that thing called optical blending that we know happens in these areas, and we want to see some of that, what it's going to look like. So we use 8 feet here. We use 8 feet here in the gallery. That's what we use in displaying in most of the paintings and stuff here. So I'll push that back like that. I'm going to increase that light up there just a bit more. Maybe even a bit more. It's going to dry down. I know it's going to dry a value or so darker. And I like that bit of texture there. I'll leave it. I'll tap that around just a touch and leave that light coloring up there. Very impressionistic way to paint them, and I just love it. Let's bring some of that right back there. And the tree will come right back through that. And that might be pretty good back in there. You could soften it. All depends on how much you want to do. You could come in here with little halftones and drag through and soften some of your effects. And I try to blend through, not blend. I said blend. I try to move through the colors to incorporate them so you can give the shapes. But if you do it too much, you start to soften your mountain shapes out too much. And then you lose the interest. So, how much you do, that is certainly up to you here. But that's a nice size, or a nice, bit of it back there. Let's take some of our greens and we'll push in. It uses my flat like this. I love to paint with the flat or the edge of a bristle like this, to give these broken edges of the trees and stuff that you can get. Now, some of these broken edges, as you get back here, will be more atmospheric, so you've got to add sky and those grays to it here to get some of those atmospheric looks to them. There, okay. That's just a little too light, so I'll push through, but I love to step back. This is what's really nice about the long handle brushes, is I step way back. Here, let's put a little bit of that light green in there too. Step way back, get some of those light colors here. This is really what makes your paintings pretty, when you manipulate the colors like this just a bit, and you get some of those colors here showing up. You get a little bit of verticals because we're painting a lot of pine. So your overall impression is vertical, but you got to have a few horizontals in there too. But we do paint a lot of marks into the verticals here, like that. Let's take some of this, put a mark or two, and don't destroy all of your paper towel work that we did earlier here as well. We want to preserve some of that there, okay. So right now it's just the color. We haven't put the depth of field in and stuff like that yet. We're putting in the color here, okay? So let's get a little more dark right up here, especially where we're going to be turning this here. And again, I'm just watching colors, color tones and stuff. That's what I'm watching. Now, I'm going to bring out, quite a bit different than the photo, I'm going to bring out a light little shoreline there. Some burnt sienna, some yellows. Here, maybe a bit of the greens here. I want a light little shoreline just popping out right here out of the trees. So I'll drop some of that. As a matter of fact, we might even put a nice light burnt sienna on a little sky color there. Right edge here. Break that just a bit here. We'll see a bit. Now don't get rid of all your other tones. See, I'm just going to kind of use my brush like this and model that through to keep some of that other tone in there. See, I need that. I need to preserve that. Let's do, those of you that studied landscapes with me and the landscapes course and stuff, I always do a Louis Ashton Knight stroke back here. Louis Ashton Knight, a 19th century, very beautiful landscape painter, and he always put that light right back there into his distance. And I might go to a smaller brush, what I like to do, and really grab, and I shouldn't jump over that little guy there, so I push that in. That's the light little edge, a nice horizontal light edge of that back side of that river back there, see? And let's just use that, continue to use that for a second and put some additional, see, little touches like this of the lights, and move your brush around a bit, hit little marks of it. That just adds so much interest to your painting. Okay. Now you can go in and you start to look at that. Yeah, that's coming. You can go in and put in what we call the core darks, which are important, especially in landscapes. Darks are really important, and there's all kinds of techniques that you can use your dark. A basic principle of landscape is thin in the shadows, thick into the highlights. So thin shadows, highlight, and then thicker highlights. But that doesn't necessarily always hold true. I like to have some thickness to them. But you can reduce the power of a shadow, even with you have the acrylics as it's starting to dry up. You can take some water and pull through and create a whole other effect. Now I kind of like that, so I won't do it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to build that a little bit more over there. But that's, you're going to read and hear all different kinds of, philosophies and stuff like that on landscapes. And that's one of them I was quite taken with, is thin into the shadows, thick into the highlights. Now, I don't always do that on a alla prima one like this, but that's something that I'm always kind of aware of. But I'm going to add some of these core darks, especially back down over in here, into this dark area. So I'm building my light area, I'm building my dark area here. Let's take some of these greens and add some of those in there. And I'm going to start reducing some of these little light spots. I'm going to leave some of the nice openings there of the tree we call sky holes. I'll leave some of those in there. Some of these trees and stuff here, I'm going to be building them, and I'll get some more verticals in there. But I like all these colors. See, that's the thing. I like all these colors. Let's get some burnt siennas into that and put a few strokes of that. Look at how that burnt sienna just takes away, turns that green into a, you get more going on in these beautiful colors. And I start to look at certain areas, like right in through here. A little touch of that burnt sienna will play really nice against that yellow right there. So I'll add just a bit of it right in there. And see, then I got all these other little light colors. I can play that lighter green right out here by the tips of that and emulate like a tree or something like that there. And how, and this is very important. Very important. Okay, how are you with all of this going to get depth in your painting? Okay, now there's all different kinds of ways in all the lessons that I show you to get depth, but basically depth goes through atmospheric perspective, and the other big one is linear perspective. Well, in linear perspective we have size of our rocks that can help us, and so on and so forth. In atmospheric, of course, you become more like the atmosphere, like our mountain that's going back there. But in linear perspective, this is where you also do it with your brush strokes. So you can have So I'll be just tapping my brush back here. So if I take this lighter green, maybe a touch of white in here, model that. As I come back here, if I'm going to paint anything on the back side back here, it'll be tiny little marks made with my brush. Whereas if I'm up here and I want to have a brush mark or something like that, my brush marks will get a little bit bigger up here. And that's going to help you with your linear perspective here. So back here, they'll get the marks themselves will be smaller. Up here, the marks themselves will be larger, bigger. And that's going to give you your brush marks. So whenever you're back in here where we really want to get that depth, we're going to think small little marks, small touches of our brush. And then up here into the front, where we want to have a little bit more going on, we're going to think some bigger marks, some bigger pushes of our brush, and give more size, basically. That's what linear perspective is. It's the size, okay? So we'll do that. Now, let's just quickly bang in some shadows here onto the rock. So we'll go down. So right now I have just a light tone on it. Let's get a nice dirty red and blue, little burnt sienna. Let's get a nice shadowy tone, real dark, down here around a 2 or a 3. Down in here, we can pull that down into the water a bit. Here, now see that water is still wet there because I used that open medium right there in it. So it's still wet here. And let's get that shadow over here on this side of this rock. We'll drop just a few of those in here. Hardest thing for a left brain painter like me is to put all these rocks in here and not go 1, 2, 3, 4 just like that. That happens so easy. Let's go a medium color, get it up around a 5 or a 6 here, maybe some burnt sienna in it, but see it's not mixed real well here. Let's get in some receding planes. That could be just a touch darker. Few receding planes on those rocks there. Here, it's got kind of a rounding movement there to it. There'll be just a bit more shadow up over here. Let's get that receding plane. Most of this one will be a receding plane because it's going to sit most into the shadow here. And we'll just touch into some of those other ones there. So color setup wise, that's going pretty well. We need to add a lot more, but that's going pretty well. I'm going to rinse some of that thick color out of my brush here. Okay, and I'm going to come in and work a little bit more because since I'm pushing back, opening up this shoreline here a bit, let's just tap a bit of that in there. See, I'll just go right through those trees. I'll let these edges kind of blur. I don't always make so like here you see that blurry line and stuff that's there. And there's not a real clear, and this is the real difference between an impressionist and a realist. And a realist will do that real clean line, and an impressionist will do that blur, that movement of that colors back and forth, and will blur our edges quite a bit, okay? And I did realism for a number of years, and I loved it, but for me right now, it's not where I like to do. It's too stiff. I'm going to lighten this plane up just a bit more. Start to advance that rock just a touch more. Let's get a little bit of yellow in there. Nice coloring tones. And see, I plan my marks. This is called a mark, not necessarily a stroke, a mark. I plan it for how I want that light to be hitting that particular object there, okay? And I got a sense into that one there. It's almost a sideways here too, so I'm going to add a sideways mark. So you can see a different mark makes it look different, see? Let's get a little bit of a sideways mark there. Now that might be too light. We'll have to see. I'll break the edges a little bit there. Might have to see. Let's get a little bit lighter though over here. It's more into the sunshine. And we can always knock it down. It's best just to give it a go. Give it a good look. We can always knock it down. And see, I use corners and edges of these big fusion brushes are really nice. See, it gives me this little blurry edge of color there. And I can, if I use a lot of paint, I can focus a real found edge there. Do you see that? And then if I thin the paint out in my brush a bit, I get more of a, what we call the fractured edge. And I like to do that. So I thinned it out just a bit, see, and I get this fractured, dragging edge here on that rock, which will give it a, you know, a different kind of look there. Okay. Now let's take some of this light color. I'm going to thin it down even more, and I'm maybe even just a touch darker, and we'll pull down just a bit, and that's going to put the reflection of that rock right into the water there just a bit. We'll do the same over here. We'll just darken it down just a bit. Let's come over here where this rock is. We'll pull it right in there. Now, I like to take my finger and blur it side to side, and see this is still wet. This is still wet. I leave a little bit of that. You know, it all depends on how much time. You know, it's time. How much time you're going to take in your painting. But you can leave a little bit of the more of the color and the line. You can come back a couple of times and refine this to a real beautiful. And you see me do it in some of my landscapes where I'll spend more time in my reflections and stuff like that. Well, you know, for me, I make 100% of my living through painting, and we support a lot of salaries here, a lot of salaries here at the studio. So everything that I do, it has to be, you know, I have to kind of plan. That's the business side of it, and plan that. But how much? But you know, there are times where I just paint for myself, and I spend and just enjoy putting a lot of little touches and movements and stuff like that into the painting, and it's really a lot of fun. Now I'm going to make this rock advance more. Now sometimes I'll do this with a, and I'll show you. And this is a great way to do it. You have this real thick. See on your palette now, this is getting really thick. Here, it's not dried, it's really thick, and it's got that open medium in it. But look at the modeling of the colors that are here. And this is where you can take your knife and you can come in with that thick and that texture. Let's get a little more light in there. This is where I like to have thicker white, because I usually add it in at this time. Now, you can see that real thickness of that paint going on there, see? But see, using the thickness and applying it like that, on that on the edge of my knife there, you get like a 3D effect of that rock pulling forward. Now, an impressionist might soften through that. You know, we might soften through that. Or I'll take my knife and I'll blur through this way. I'll come into it and pull up just a bit to pull off some of that color and leave some of that other edge there like that. And, you know, you're controlling that. That's what you're kind of looking at here. And how much you do or what you do, that becomes your signature. But I might add a bit of that right in here on a couple of rocks here, right in there like that, okay? And, you know, it all depends on how much time and what look are you going for. But I love this thick color like this. So before your acrylics completely dry up here, and you got to work it, and I'm working on my glass palette, and before they completely dry up or something that you're going to do with it, think about going in and hitting some of these rocks. Now let's lighten up, and I'll just lighten up even more with this, and let's take some of that and get a pretty good dollop right up there onto that one there. Here, break that edge just a bit. There, like that. And so then sometimes I'll take my smaller brush that I have here and work that through, come back in with a little bit of medium. Let's put a bit of that red into this blue here and pull back and remove some of that in a slightly different shape. so I get a different look to the rock. Now, so there's all kinds, and like I say, there's all kinds of ways. You know, an impressionist will work it like this and work the tones, and you know, a realist might come in here and really work the rocks and put in what we call broken color, layers and layers and layers of broken color, which, you know, I talk about in some of my classes and stuff, in a broken color. And broken color is fantastic. And it is, it's all up to you how much you're going to do on yours, on your painting. Now I'm going to drop that light down a little further here, so that comes forward just a bit more. I want that, see, I got kind of that edge of this rock that's right up there. There's an edge, and kind of like that, but I do like that real dark shadow as well. And so I want to get some of that a bit more right in there. And I love to use these fusion brushes really flat and stuff, and it just gives me a beautiful light to dark effect. Let's get that shadow. Now see, if I'm painting that much shadow, that shadow is going to reflect down into the water here as well. And you can pull it down to create that nice reflection, or just add the tone in there, and that's gonna do quite a bit to it. Okay, so that sets that up there. All right, and I think I'm going to, before I go work on the guy, I'm going to go back to my 1/2-inch brush here for a bit, and I'm going to take some of these lighter colors, sky, a little bit of blue here. And I like some of that blue-green coming through there. So a little blue, a little green. And it looks about a medium value, so we'll take this to about a medium value here first. Model it a little bit. So right about in there, right about a 5 to a 6. And I'm going to drag just a bit of that across. Some of that. I got to get some dark in there too. But I want to take some of this out just a bit. Here, some of this other. Now this is like as this comes in here. See, you want that to kind of blur. You don't want them to blend together, make another color. You just kind of push and you blur it together there, just a bit, and that's giving some different color of the water here. Let's grab a bit more blue in this area. One of the reasons why I love this photo, and one of the things I look for, is into the water. How many colors and stuff do I see into the water with the movement in here? Because to me, water, whenever you paint water, that's a lot of interest into the painting. And I just love to paint water. I didn't used to. I didn't understand it. Now I do. I'm going to take a little open medium and some of my rock color and some of that green, and pull through right in through here. Some of these other tones. Got to be careful not to do it too many times there, Dave. You don't want to do it too many times. Let's take just a bit of that tone right out here into this mid area, and that's just a touch light. So I'm not going to take it off. I'm going to take a little blue, a little burnt sienna, key off that burnt sienna. Let's take some open medium, drop the whole value of it down. Blue, green, burnt sienna. Let's just pull through again, and you can see some of that kind of coming together there. That's better. And it's kind of like a highlight. Let's add a little bit more of that open medium here. It's kind of like the shimmer going across the top of the water. We'll push that right into there. Okay, so you'll see some of those coloring. And that's what's going to make, and now step back and look at it that way. So it's coming. That is what gives your paintings the most interest, if you take the time and you build paint. You know, so many people will write and comment, why didn't you start out like that? Well, building a layer is a couple of things. Building layers takes time, and building paint takes time. You get interest from paint, so you have to use a lot more paint. And I find that acrylic artists, unlike oil artists, acrylic artists have a hard time getting enough paint. And we really got to start to use our paints really quite thick. And that's what I've concentrated on over the last several years, is getting more paint, more colors going on into my paintings here. So I get more stuff going on. And sometimes it takes a while to get those colors, that amount of color in there. But we need to get that. We need to get those in there. Now, let's go back and let's just hit a few areas here with a bit more interest, some of our depth there. Now see, I hit that white rock there by accident, and I dragged another mark there. So what I'm going to do is just take a little shadow and turn it into the look of a little rock there. That's right there and there. And we'll do that. Let's take a bit of this shadow here and add that into that edge there. Some more burnt sienna and blue are real good indicators, shadow indicators here. You could also use the green and violets are pretty, but I love the burnt siennas. The burnt sienna has a warmth to it into your shadows that just looks wonderful into your paintings. Now, see right out through here, I don't have to do much other than just bounce a little bit of these colors. Just mod them on your brush like this and just bounce a bit of them around to make it look like a bit of a rocky area there, see? Now, every once in a while, and this is what I started doing the last few years, is I'll come in and I'll add myself a nice, maybe a nice plane, sometimes a little bit of an angle or a strong vertical and horizontal. That gives you a little bit more of a movement line down like that, down that hillside. And I like to do that into a painting. So then I'm just going to grab some dark and drag over it a bit in a few areas. Here, where those trees will be. And I took a bit much of it out. You didn't stop me. You know, we paint too much sometimes. You know, I wonder how successful I'd be if I would just learn to stop painting sometimes. I paint too much. You just think that extra little stroke is going to be great, and then it screws it up. And you give yourself an opportunity to go back and repeat it again. Let's just put a little halftone. Halftone sits between the light and the dark. And we learn that with a lot of different paintings. Let's just drop a bit of that in there. Okay, so we have that nice hillside, which I wanted to kind of capture there. Maybe a deeper shadow on this side of the rock. We'll pop it forward a bit here. So, you know, you can pop that rock forward like you see in the photo with, you know, a little bit more shadow back behind it there. Let's put that edge back up a little bit heavier. There. And that's just for an impressionism, that's just a little too much of an edge. So I'm just going to break it a bit. There. See, it just takes a bit of that off. And it takes away just a touch of the power of that rock. And we'll add just a mark or two here. So that's pretty good. And we can get, if we really want to set that rock back into the water, let's get a nice, deep, cool little red, violet, and green and blue burnt sienna. Let's get that right down in here, right into that shadow. There. That's that deep shadow. We'll blur that a bit. Right in there on that rock. He's fishing this nice little riffle. I'm going to push that. I like how this rock sits out into the water a bit more, so I'm going to push these others back just a bit more, I think. Here, a little more shadow in there. Pull down just a bit. Here. So you can see how you can, you know, I'm painting from, you know, reference, but also a bit of my imagination here, setting these up and in. And you can adjust anything up and along there. That's the fun thing about it. But you can also make it very much, you know, very much detailed and, you know, just and more of a realistic painting there too. You use basically the same type of techniques, but you do more of a finite line. So you leave some of those finite lines. And what I'm doing here is basically painting out some of those finite lines and blurring the edges and stuff like that. So it becomes just a touch more impressionistic here. And I like that as well. I'm going to rinse that dark out for just a second. Take some of this light, even some of this light green that's back up over there, and add that into the water right over here. I always look so, you know, they always, you know, my students always say, well, what kind of colors do you use for water? You pull the sky, and then you pull the colors around that object. So here we have a lot of greens and stuff, so we're going to pull those. And usually the water's just a slightly cooler, darker, just a little bit cooler, darker than what the other objects are. So you pull those colors down in there like that. And in doing so, I destroyed this little rock a bit, so I'll just add a little bit more of the reflection of it back in here. Quick movements of your brush there, add a bit more of that reflection there. You can get a touch more of that nice shadow line right there. That will give you your water line right there. Just pull horizontal, just like that. That sets up that. See how, and it's real thick here. The paint's getting stiff right in there. That's when it's just beautiful to pull that horizontal and set that rock right there in the water like that. Maybe a nice lighter version heading back up towards the sky, a little bit of that blue right in there to set that light there again. So you see, I'll repeat these several times as I work these colors and this water and stuff. I'll repeat it several times here to get these looks, you know. Now, okay, let's go back in here. We'll work up just a nice soft working back there. And I need a bit more yellow oxide out here. Just about done with that. So we need a bit more. Thought I put out enough, but I didn't. So we'll use that yellow oxide here. And let's just come right down in here with the yellow oxide, model into some of this sky and greens. But we're looking for, because we're going atmospheric, so we're looking for some lighter tones that we can push right in here. Now don't lose everything we've done so far. Just add some, and the marks have to be, because you're painting for linear, the marks have to be smaller. So just think about some smaller little marks back there. Colors moving, okay? We could take some of this beautiful blue burnt sienna. Might have to get out some more burnt sienna. This mountain and stuff here. Colors through. So you can paint out your trees with some of your mountain as well, and carry that, you know, just little marks of that mountain and stuff back through there as well. Like we could, that's a nice color I'm using there. We could pull some of that right back up here and increase just another edge of that, and then put some of those trees and stuff right there with it as well. It's impressionistic, see? So what is going on there? The viewer will see, you know, if you, and that's the hardest thing. When I used to paint mountains, I used to paint all these, and they were so stiff, you know, so I started painting the impressionistic edge, and I vary the tone. So let's put a little bit more of that light tone right in there, and let that drag. When I get that nice thick white, that's what really does it. Let that thick white and drag like that and break that up. That's when it gets the prettiest. And I'll leave these little marks here. And so I don't always paint the mountain in wet on wet. I'll let some of this come back. And if I think those marks are a little too much, then I'll just lightly take them off with a little bit of the dark shadowy color. Let's thin our color Now, see, I'll thin the color if I want it to just slowly affect it. So I'll thin it with a bit of extender there. And I'll just slowly take it off, affect that here. Blur that edge a bit. There, like that. That's kind of nice. I could use a more, into the shape of this, a more powerful stroke right down there like that. But any of that will work, you know. Any of that works. So we'll just push a bit of that right up over here, right there. And that's the hardest thing, though, is, you know, is getting some different shapes, not repeating too many times what's going on in your painting here. So you want to get some different shapes. Let's take a real light blue up to like a 9.5, almost a 10 here, and push just a bit of that. And see, that's a little dark still. Let's thin that with just a bit of extender and push that through here, right through the edge of that mountain, get a bit more of that sky color and stuff going on. And really, to incorporate some of the stuff here, let's push some of that right in here. I'm going to leave some of that original gray through there, and that's okay. And to really bring that and incorporate that in, let's add just a mark of that right here with the Lewis Ashton Knight depth into the painting, right in there like that. That sets that back edge. Let's pull it forward ever so slightly here. Ever so slightly. That was not ever so slightly. That was a mark of color. Don't worry, I'm a professional. We can fix that. Let's just put a little burnt sienna and a little bit of our blues and stuff, and just model those together a bit. And I'll blur them. I'll push around a bit, but I don't want to push too much to make it all one color. I'll just kind of blur that. But that is kind of a pretty color right there like that. So let's bring some of that right down here by the edge of that rock where he's fishing that little riffle there. Like the water's just kind of coming right off of that. And you could use the corner of your brush to kind of put on a little sparkles there, and into the water. Blur through those just a bit here. Grab some of that. Now sometimes I'll drag like this and put on, just like what I'm about to do right now, I'll put on too much, and I know that I'm putting on too much, and then I'll take a slightly different color, different type of thing, and I'll paint a different stroke down, maybe across a bit, but I'll take them out. So I don't always just put on the lights. I will paint them down and out sometimes with other colors. So I put on the lights and then paint them out and stuff. And I like to do that. And we'll take this light blue. Let's put a few marks of that right out here. Right out like that. You can see that fusion. You just, you know, I showed you in the ocean water and one of the last ones how to drag it with your palette knife, but the fusion does it really well here, is just dragging it with the flat. Let's put a nice shadow right here where this guy's going to be. Here. And create some of that nice shadow and light movement here. We'll have to put some of his reflection in there with the shadow and light movement. Just hold the brush flat and push that around a bit. There. We'll create some of that nice movement. All right, let's go in. I'm going to go in with a small, and usually when I paint, you know, people or figures, I will tend to do that with a synthetic. Now the fusion is real soft. The synthetic is that's good water there. The synthetic is a little bit stiffer. Not as stiff as a bristle, but it is a little bit stiffer. And so I'll start to do figures with that. Now he has a little kind of reddish pink hat and I just might include that here. And I'm going to use a bridge, any kind of bridge and stuff, just to kind of hold my hand here, you know, kind of steady here, as I'm just going to push that. And I'm going to, this little figure that I do here, when I work this figure, I'm going to paint him several times, very simplistically, and blur the edges, okay? So it is, you know, and the tones, I try to break them down into what is called the light and the dark of the tones. So I'll start out with light colors and shadow colors, and then I'll come back with medium colors to soften him out and stuff like that. But I'm really going to just kind of drop him in. Let's get him lighter. And he's going to have a lot of light color on him. One reason why I like to use the thicker white. We'll drop his hand out, his arm right out through there. And but he's going to be very simplistic. But I tend to paint him light and dark, and then go back and break through with some other colors, mid-tones, to soften him out. So we'll start, you know, pounding on some light here, and his shirt back here is going to go a little darker blue, gray blue here, maybe a little bit of violet in it here, and so we'll drop some of that darker color right in there, so you'll see a breaking up of light and dark. See, as I start to just kind of touch him in, and you'll see there's little spots of light, and you know, you're painting impressionistically here, where the angle of your stroke is important. So I'll create a bit of his back here. The angle of your stroke is going to be very important, but it's also going to be very important that you don't play around too much and make just one color. So we want to keep moving here. Let's go with a real dark here for the shadow. That's going to be right in here into these pants. He has actually a tan pair of pants on, but this is the shadow that's going to be there on that one. And you can see here when you look up there with the shadow and the light, you can see it's really quite a shadow and light, and quite a stark shadow and light here. Let's put more of a tan, little burnt sienna yellow and light color here onto the edge here of him, like that. And a nice light stroke coming down here towards the water, where it's gonna, that's his leg. So yeah, nice thick paint stands up onto the surface here, and this other part of his leg here, there, like that. Okay, and of course lots of differences of tone. We'll, boom, just catch those edges there. And let's widen his shoulders out here with some of this blue here. There, like that. And so I start out everything really impressionistically. Let's take a bit of burnt sienna and blue and just put in the back edge of his, which would be his hair and stuff there. But I don't always just, I'll move that tone around a bit into a few other areas when you're painting a figure like this. Now let's just take that burnt sienna and lighten it up a bit. You don't want to make a perfect flesh. You just want to give the impression of a lighter flesh area here. Burnt sienna and white will probably do that okay. And again, what I'll do is I'll paint it too big and then I'll take it down. Let's put out a touch right out through here that you might see for his, where his hand is, just a bit of that here. And we'll come back in a little more red stuff. So you think about your shadow and light as you're tapping in and touching in to some of this. Where's the shadow and light? So when I'm painting a face like this also, so I put the face down in, I blur it down into his shoulders, and then I come back and put his shoulders right back up on in front here with some thicker paint here. So I'll come back, and you're going to want to do almost a slight vertical stroke here so that you put some of that thickness, and the shape is going to be so important here. This lighter blue, the shape or the mark that you use is so important, you know, on him. And then you can soften some of it with a halftone. So I'll put a little halfway tone right in here onto his arm, and then his arm is thick, and I know that. And so we'll take some of it down with some of our real toned blues and other colors here, creating that shadow there, like that. There we go. And let's go with a medium. So, you know, they always say, and if you look at, you know, figure painters and stuff like Sargent and them too, they always say that the midtones, the 5s, the 6s, you know, 4, 5, 6, those midtones, those are the true colors of the object. The rest of it is just light and dark, and so you really vary the tones quite a bit into the light and the dark. And then the midtone is actually the true color that you're looking for. So I'll be real careful with some of those midtones. Let's go back in and reset that, the idea of his hat. And see, I got that flesh up there that's kind of blurred, not real great. I'll take care of that. But each time I touch him here with another tone, you see, he's starting to refine a little bit more and a little bit more. And on him into this painting, I'll slow down and refine him quite a bit. Now I got rid of all that shadow. Now it just looks like a poof on the top of his head. We can take care of that. Remember, we're professionals. We can do that. I never get frustrated with him. I always have just a lot of fun. There we go. We'll put that hat, that hat back out there. And he's got that brim, so that you give the idea of that little brim there. Just put a little mark right out there. They're really, you know, if you can get through some of the laughter and some of the fun things that you can have with and you start to relax your painting just a bit, you know, painting figures and stuff like that in there can be a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing some wonderful portraits and stuff as well, which I know I keep saying that in the last couple of ones, but we have it. It's in editing. We have a nice one coming. I'm just going to use this blur down his edge there with that light of the water there, that light water edge back there. And we could tap a bit of the blue and stuff along the edge of that water just to create a bit more interest back there. Yeah, that's better. Here. There, like that. And then I'll look for other slight little tones that I can, you know, some of my brown little tones, my mid-tones, that I can add here to him as a figure, and look for some of those edges there. Now his arm is still just a bit big. I'm going to want to take that down, and I'm going to want to restate that blue of the shirt, which I'll make the blue that I want it to be into the mid-tone, and I'll hit a mark with that, give a little directional mark there like that. See, now he's getting that shirt, see? But it's all of those, and then you step back and take a look at that, and it's starting to look like a little guy there. You have to squint a little, but it's starting to look like it. And but all of those little directional things and all of those little tones start to add up, and it starts to get a nice look to them here. And so I will, on this painting, I'm going to work on him a little bit because I want him to be really the center of interest of this painting, and I want some of these little tones in there, and little things like, he has a little fishing creel there in the photo that's on there, so we might want to add a little mark for that. And he's got some stuff going on there, and some of this water we can back paint back and thin out his arm just a touch. So I do a lot of negative painting and other, just to set some of that back, thin out, adjust him just a bit. We're going to want to take and this is where I start to go really impressionistic, so I might, right where he comes into the water here, I might make like you see the edge of a boot or something here, and at a totally different angle. Just set that in, totally different angle there, and then I'll blur that out into the water there, and maybe even take a nice light water stroke here. Now, you see I put in that, and that's too much, right? What do? We paint it out, okay? We paint it out. So we'll take a little bit of our dark here, and we'll paint some of that out, some of that little blur line there. We'll leave a bit of the riffle there. We'll just pull that down, and it starts to look like you know what you're doing there. That little riffle coming out, and we'll pull up and down just a bit, maybe pull through that and tap that just a bit, and he gets a bit of that little riffle. It's just nice. Even this little synthetic will drag it, but you see it's a little more precise with this synthetic, a dragged line like that. It's just a bit more precise with that synthetic. Now let's put up here on his shirt and stuff, he has some real nice light, real light blue that hits his shoulders. And that's probably got to have to tack up a bit so I can really get a nice hit on there. And so I'll probably have to do that. So this is where I'll put in a little softening tone right here and drag that down to his back just a bit, like that. But I really get that nice shoulder out there. See, they're really kind of fun. If you step way back and squint, it looks real, But they're a lot of fun. And they take a lot of practice, to basically, I think more than anything else, like with the practice. And here I'm gonna put another little hit of light. Sparkle. I call them the sparkles of light out here. That lets you imagine the shapes. That's the hardest thing, I think, in this, is you're painting the imagination of it. So you don't want to paint too precise. Let's put that light, real light blue here, right out across his shoulders a bit more here. There we go. So, and I'll leave little strokes like that. See, now that's just a blob of a stroke, and that looks kind of okay here. You may want to put a hit of a light, right here on his hip, or where that creel is going to be, right there. I don't think his his hat and stuff need too much more, other than maybe a bit of that light pink kind of color hitting up here again. In the photo, it's a bit more pronounced there. And so let's hit that. And again, I do too much, and then I'll hit the red here, coming in on that side of it right there like that. And yeah, and let's take the edge. I'm not done with the water and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy to do this now, but sometimes I just like to do this. And let's just give the idea of the pole here. Just the idea of it here, so you can see here. And I like that, you know, because it gives a nice broken line there. And we'll add some more stuff in there. But we need to get a little flesh tone in there by his hand and his arm. So burnt sienna, just burnt sienna and white. It's just a real simple, suggestive color. That's all it is there. Suggestive. Let's put just a touch of that. Now, if you want to go in there and give him eyes and ears and all that kind of stuff, you can do that. I'm not going to. But I'm going to let that tack up because he's really thick right now, and every time I'm touching him, it's something else is happening there. So I'm going to. But I'm not done with him, and I'll probably put some more in. Well, I will. I'll put some more into it. Let's get some of our shadows. Let's go burnt sienna and a little bit of blue here. Maybe a little thinner, because shadows should be just a touch thinner. And let's redefine. You know, down back underneath here, you're going to have shadows and stuff like that for the suggestions of underlying structures of rocks and stuff like that. I'm going to thin this out here, maybe even just a touch of that light. And I'm just going to push some of this through here, and that's where you can actually, you've seen me paint before in some of these underlying rock structures and stuff. And I'm just going to, because it's, you know, kind of a impressionistic edge here, I'll just imagine where some of these underlying structures of rocks and stuff are and push some of them in here. Maybe a touch of the lighter kind of water here, just kind of blurred through just a bit there. And we're going to put out a bit more of my burnt sienna here. And get a bit more color going on, I think. Let's go back. Let's go up to a little bit bigger brush. Go back to our 1/2 inch brush here as I work some of this. I want some of these yellows, burnt siennas, some of these other colors that we see out here into the scene, out into the water. Remember, your water carries everything. Carries all of the colors here. Let's take an edge of this with the big brush here. Like that's how I like to just drag that big brush edge there. See, it just scrapes along the surface here, and it creates these little light colors. Now you can also do this with the knife. I've showed you that with the knife in the oceans and stuff like that. And you can always take some darker blues, burnt siennas, a little bit of violet maybe even in there, and paint some of that out there like that. Okay, that works. But you know, catching some of the feeling here of big movement of water. So I'll take a nice color here that is blue, burnt sienna, some yellows, and we're just going to kind of gently move this through that right there, softening a bit of it. And so pick up through some of that pull down of that rock there. See, that just kind of gently calms down the water. And in this kind of scene here, you want some of that calm down. And sometimes, and I'll just show you this too, sometimes a really great thing to do is, since we're acrylics, we rinse out our brush, we take a little bit of water and we pull through. Look at how it melts those colors together. And the Dutch used a technique that was wonderful. It was called a melting technique. And they actually physically melted the tones together with their solvent in a pulling action like that. And it kind of melted all of your tones and stuff like that together. And it was wonderful. So if I wanted to soften that area there, I take the water, and see, this is if you have the right acrylic too. You have to have the right acrylic. If you're using acrylic has a lot of vinyl in it, this won't happen. These are artist acrylics, the Heritage, and so they work with it. You can see the water bleed out right there. But see how that melts that right together there like that. And it's another way to do really nice colors for water and stuff here. Works really well. Let's get just a little burnt sienna and blue and some of that. Let's just add a bit more of that tone, darker, right around our little guy there. Now, too much, which I know, is what I do. Take some of that out. Just kind of blur that a bit. There. That looks kind of good. Okay, now let's go up and we'll use that small, perfect, like a number 8 or so, 6 or 8 brush. And let's take some pine green, some burnt sienna. Let's, didn't bring my scraper here. Let's just take some of this right off, clean some of this back just a bit. This is good landscape stuff right there. You know, you could drop that into rocks and everything. But I want to clean this, make this area here a little bit of blue here. Model that right up here like that. Let's take some of this and just use the brush and create some edges of the pine trees now coming up. And try to get some variation here to their, and you can pull down a bit, but try to make all of them a little bit different here to get some of those nice details here. So I just use the brush sideways. Don't cover up everything you did before. Let's just get some light colors. Maybe pull at an angle down sometimes. Here, like that. And pull some heavier shadow marks. Don't cover up everything. Leave some of those lights. And we'll change the color. We'll add some green and some yellow over here. Change it up a bit. Let's come out here. Make a few more. As you imagine these going back, you've got to get smaller. Here. Imagine these going back. They've got to get smaller. Other little things there. Like that. Let's add some bushier effects in here too. Fills them up. It's a forest. So I usually put in 2 or 3 and then I start to fill up a bit more here. And we'll even take some of this light color here. So get up over here into some of these. Get some of this light. Add those little edges there. A bit more. There. And I'll thin out just a bit over here too. And I'll do some nice verticals here, because I'm going to take this right off the edge here. Let these go right up, but I'll leave some of those sky holes. If you've eliminated some of those nice sky holes, just go put them back in. Let's get some yellows. Let's make some different types of trees right back there. Yellows, a little bit of Hansa, a little bit of yellow oxide. Get some other types in there. Some other smaller ground bushes and stuff. You know, this is what can take a while, but can also give you a lot of interest if you know, just take some of these other colors, model them all together here. Use the edge of your brush and kind of bounce that around a bit there. Get some of those other colors. Now see, that color right there is nice, but it's just too much in one area. So I take it out. I'll create like a little burnt sienna shadow. Look what that does into that. Makes it look like you know what you're doing. Oop, take out the fishing pole. You get to put it back in again. Which I got to anyway with a smaller brush, but let's just drop a bit of that right back in here like a little plane. Another little linear plane. A few little corners of your brush, this lightly there, to make a few marks. Suggestive stuff in the back. And you can really, you can really get, let's take some of this nice gray. Really get some nice light. And you can even make it a little atmospheric with a touch of that blue sky, just a touch here. And create some of that. That's a little too thick in paint, so I want to thin it out. Some extender. So I'll use extender rather than, and I'll get a fresh paper towel. Extender rather than open medium. Let's put a bit of that in here. Send some of that stuff a little bit further back, softening a bit of the effect right around where he is, right back there. Going back, heading back, so it's getting more atmospheric. Softening that effect. There. It's going further back. And some more light color right back there. Yeah. And see, sometimes I'll just put that in there like that. I'll rinse it out. Maybe even take a little bit of water and just melt that right in there like that. Melt that as part of the effect right in there. Sends it around. That's further back. Now, you know, I do like that Lewis Ashton Knight. Nice light little bit on the water. So I'll come back there. A little careful right in there. And add that light there. Maybe a bit more. Or might let it dry up a bit more and add a bit more in there. And yeah, now my rocks that I have and stuff there feel just a little bit lost to it. So I'm going to go work those back up again. Okay, so we're going to run a little overtime here. I'm going to work that. I'm going to add a little more colors in here. Do you see that? And then I'm going to add just a touch more midtones to the little guy. And so that we don't take up too much time, I'm just going to do that, and we'll come back, and I'll talk to you about finishing up some last little shines and shimmers and stuff like that, okay? But it's just working everything we've done, just a little bit more. I'm going to put just a little bit more work into this one, okay? And then I'll see you back here in just a minute. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, what I did in here is I actually painted him a couple more times, actually increasing the amount of dark, which kind of put him on a diet a little bit too. So I just did that a couple times, and I made his hat a little bit more pink. But it does start to capture the guy over here, I moved it down here so you can see. I started capturing him a little bit more. He has a bit more white, a light color out through here. And I started to add that in at that angle, and it just made him appear a little bit too wide, so I just narrowed him back down. Now I also put just a little bit more color right in through here, and a little bit more color down through here, some gentle little riffles and stuff. And I thought about making a stronger stroke where it ends right there at the water, but yeah, I think it was okay. And then for the actually to get the final bit of the pole here, I took my edge of my knife, and I will use that probably, or a fine line, just to put a little bit of the fishing line out through there as well. But you can increase the color and work along your shoreline here. You know, add a few more little light colored rocks and stuff back through here. Little touches and taps, you know, varying some of that as it goes back here. A little bit more atmospheric, a little bit more blue back through here. You know, add some impressions of rocks and stuff as it goes back. Just little stuff through here. I'm going to leave this, you know, I got to thinking, what I do a lot when I'm going to do those small little riffles, and I take that brush like I showed you before and other things, and I, let's just move this over here just a bit and go up just a bit. What I tend to do is drag the brush very flat and kind of scrub it a little bit like here with those lights, and you get those nice little ripples like that if you use just a little bit of stiff paint. That's one reason why I like that white paint to be so stiff, is it just makes these kinds of ripples kind of stuff really nice in here. And you could, you know, do a little bit more with the guy, but I want to keep him kind of impressionistic there. And I'm kind of debating, do I need, let me just show you, do I need a deeper shadow? We haven't gone to our real darks, which is our blue, our green, and our red violet there. That's our deepest, darkest, coolest color in the painting, as you can see. And if I increase the green there and that, maybe even a touch of burnt sienna to help warm that just a bit. But again, keep that color. You see, I can get that real deep, super dark there, and it doesn't compete. It adds quite a bit actually over there into the shadow, and doesn't distract from him too much, which is what I like. Now he has to carry. I want the viewer to kind of come in like this and go back up and through, and so that does work. But just keep a real soft, impressionistic edge. I could use some of that dark, maybe little touches of it back up in here where I'm creating that little riffle that he's fishing there. And maybe a bit more here to the side. It's kind of a fun painting. You know, I worked on it when I turn off the camera. I worked on it for about 20 minutes or so. You know, it's good for me sometimes. Boy, you look at that and I say, I'm looking at that on the monitor, what you're looking at that. I kind of captured, but you can tell my guy's just a little bit skinnier than his, and that's because I didn't take this wider kind of a stroke. He'll have kind of a stroke there that just kind of widens him out. I might do just a little bit of that, but anyway, putting some of these extra rocks and stuff. I worked for about 20 minutes working some of the extra colors and stuff through here, and you know, that's up to you how much you're gonna put on it. You know, of course, when I was a younger artist, I put a lot more time and effort into the painting too. You know, I'd work all day, sometimes 2 days on a painting like this, and now I find that I get a better look if I paint it a little quicker. So what we want here is a little halftone, halfway between our shadow and our light. Really want to kind of give the planes of this rock a bit here. As you can tell, it just adds just a touch more interest there to that. We can take some of that color, even warm it just a bit, touch of yellow over to the other side here. And we can use that in some of our halftones. Mostly I like this rock over here. Vary the colors. Make only 1 or 2 little strokes and vary the color again. Change it up a bit. That's that nice broken color. You can put oranges. You know, technically it violated quite a bit of the painting in that, you know, I don't have any of the his hat color, you know, carried through there, which is, it's called, you're lacking a repetition of color, but it's so little that it probably doesn't notice, but I mean, you could touch little bits of it around. I think I'm going to increase just one last little thing here. I'm going to go back to my 1/2-inch brush here, and overall I like when I look back through there, but maybe just a bit in the mountain here with some of that light right back up there, and pull, because I can. I have room in my painting. I got a lot of nice interest in it, so I have room to create just a bit more going on here with that mountain up there, and maybe a bit of the shadow side. Different colors. I use different colors this time around, so it gives you, you know, it carries some different colors. Here, just tap them and break them up. You see, it'll carry some of those greens and other colors up through there. But we want to get on that burnt sienna side, just a touch, a little bit of yellow, the warmth. But remember what I said is a lot of artists use the oranges and stuff. In some of the other landscapes we talked about oranges and stuff. So let's just push a bit of that in there now. Again, let's get a nice clean paper towel. Pull that through. See, you can pull through after you apply something like that, even after the other layer's dry, and it gives you a nice look. And I like that rough look to that here, and just creates a nice coloring here. Vary the color. Vary the color. Here, I like some of this, what I call the broken color coming through the line. Don't want to do too wild and crazy, so if you touch it, it smooths it out just a bit and gives you a nice look. You could, I could build up these trees a little bit more. You know, if I wanted more separation for it to come around the corner, there's a lot of things that you can do. And, you know, over the course of the years here, we're going to be painting all different kinds of looks to show you that. And that's what really makes a good artist, is the more you watch, the more techniques you learn, the more visual, or what I call optical effects you learn. And then that raises your level. And so you gotta study those. But if I want to create a different optical effect, I'm going to put a stronger, and I'll just use a small brush here. And I'm just going to start to build up this tree on this corner right here, just a bit. And I create another, I push this triangle, actually with the dark color, I push it a little bit farther forward. And I push that other back there. And see, what it does is it creates a bigger corner right in there. And those are, like, it wraps around the corner. So the dark colors are advancing, especially up through here. Light colors, atmospheric colors are going back. And so, you know, I can create this different kind of level here. Let's bring this one up a bit. Try to make your trees just tapping. You know, I used to make them with, when I first started painting, you know, with the good old fan brush like they show, and all that stuff. And now I do it quite a bit different. But let's put some light right on that edge. And we're just about to, we want that dark though, just a bit of that light, just to soften some of that. Just a bit here. Get some of those colors in there and soften that a bit. Yeah, but we need a few touches of that dark to create that corner. So I'll paint back and forth several times here until I get that corner kind of built the way I want. A little bit heavier dark right here. And that will create that corner just a bit more. It's going around the corner. And that's that good Lewis Ashtonite. Somebody would have to say, I used to paint a lot of Lewis Ashtonite. Lewis Ashtonite was and he was a father, he was a son of Daniel Ridgway Knight, who was also a beautiful landscape painter. They were expatriate Americans living in France. And I went over, I have purchased a couple Lewis Ashtonite's paintings and stuff. He died shortly after World War II, in the end of the 40s, I think. But, and I went over into Normandy in France when I was over there and painted in the same rivers, and some of the same rivers and areas and cottages that he had painted during that time, studying his techniques. He was just a fantastic artist. But he wouldn't do a thumbnail painting. He'd take the whole painting out into the field to paint plein air. And it was just amazing, his techniques. But I've painted and studied him for a long time. And now that's called a tangent line of color. You don't want to do that, Dave. That is where that fishing pole is breaking the plane of those. So we want that color to appear on both sides, so that fishing pole looks a little bit more realistic there. A little bit better. And we'll just develop that corner just a touch. And I think I'm going to take a small brush and do a little whippy line right out through there, and I think that's all drying down pretty nice through there. I like that and those colors, and I'll take a look to whether or not he needs that shoulder. Well, let's try it. Maybe he won't get too heavy here. We want to keep that shoulder stroke here. We want it to pull back like this, just like that, and I don't get too heavy. Let's put just a touch of light right up there. Maybe on the original he'll have a few light areas touching through him there, and we can emulate that. Yeah, that might work without him getting too. That might work. We could take just a touch, just any kind of dark. Sometimes I won't even use the dark blue. I use a different dark. Just take a bit of that. That's good. Don't touch it. that looks pretty good. And sometimes when you're painting like this, and in a nice little, or you're painting like this, and you put it away, and the next morning you come back in and you go, well, maybe that is not so right, and you'll start fussing with it, and then you'll make a mistake. And so that's what we say auto prima is your feeling of the day. You sit down and you paint it, and you leave it alone, and you don't go back to it, because sometimes those first feelings are better. Now sometimes you can make it better, but sometimes it doesn't work, and so it's better to leave it alone, not put it away and leave it alone. I have found, though, if I leave it alone for a few days, then my opinion of it changes, and I might see some things that are a little off and everything, and it can come back. But it's fun to do the impressionists like this. Now, looking at these two rocks and stuff, I can give a better sense of light direction as these are drying down. Just one last thing, I could, this rock, and when you look at, these two rocks over here with this guy here, this rock is lighter on that side than this rock over here, cooler. And I do like that, so I will warm that and lighten this rock just a bit more. Let's put a plane of light, warm, in there just a bit more. So you do see a color difference between the two, a lighting difference. That's just all some of the final stuff here. Let's put that right back in there like that. And I think that's going to dry. That's going to dry fine. I might put just a little bit more work into something over there, right back there, but not too much. And then we'll call it. Okay? Thanks very much for joining me. If you like these kinds of things, please leave a comment down there. If you want to see more landscapes and different types of landscapes. Of course, we have a landscape challenge. In my online classes, we're painting movement of water going over rocks and all of that kind of stuff, which is really great. If you want to see those kinds of techniques, you want to do that. I did a survey with you guys, and you say, landscapes came out number 2, but then I post a landscape video, and you guys don't comment and like on it very much. So if you want to see more, just hit that, and I'll do a lot more with you, because I do love love painting them, okay? And we'll see you right back here on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you back here on the channel in just a couple days with another one. We'll give it another go, okay? All right. I'll see you guys later.